Okay, so ladies, we are coming together today to just have some open discussions about what's going on in our community, anything that we can change. But I particularly wanted to kind of reach out to some women for this session just because it seems that women are the future. This is what we're hearing, right? Do you feel that that's the case, and why?
Mm. Well, I think women have always been the future, not just now, but we've always been in a leadership position because of the role and persona that we have as nurturers, as people, the primary caregivers of children, of that we really are the ones that kind of hold family together. And even in the workplace. So that has always been like the traditional role of women. And that in itself is a strong leadership role in the family and in the community. And then I think about all of the opportunities that we've had in the workplace for women to be able to step up, and women who have paved the way for us for decades, showing us that women can lead and be the best in their craft.
Absolutely. Vivian, you were
Absolutely,
going to say?
yeah, absolutely agree that there's so much strength that comes from being a nurturer. And so you think about the difference between male and female, and men maybe being those dominance in society because of their strength. Well, there's a huge amount of strength that comes from women as nurturers, and being able to run entire families and organizations and make it happen very smoothly. So, empowering ourselves to say, I got this, and empowering each other to give each other the permission that we really don't need, but encouraging each other to make those really tough decisions that really shape decisions that are being made in our community. It's an awesome experience.
Let's talk about that. What does our community need right now when it comes to women leadership? Is it happening here in Roanoke?
I think it's starting to happen. I still find myself in normal conversations with a mix of men and women, especially though if men are there. I feel the need to say I think instead of I feel, because I think those words are more respected in the male community, and it takes the emotion out of it when you use the words I think instead of I feel. And so again, it shouldn't be seen as a weakness, but as part of that strength that really comes from the way that women are nurturers.
Absolutely. Abby, you were going to say something?
Well, I'm just thinking about, like, we are in a field, we're in human service, and I think there are industries where they're heavily women-led, and where women tend to serve: healthcare, education, human service. And so those are kind of essentially like women-dominated fields. And so I think what I've been seeing too is now a shift in not just frontline workers as women, but really looking at how women can move up the ladder into management roles, in leadership, in positions where they make decisions, not just for within organizations, but for the community. We are probably one of the weird organizations where we are majority women at United Way. And so I am used to kind of working with a lot of women, different women, for as long as I've been there. And so it's to me, it's the reverse, right? It's weird when I have to work with not a whole lot of women.
Well, let's talk about that, because there sometimes is this strife between women trying to, climb the ladder as well. There's that where we start putting each other down, fighting each other. You don't seem to have that as much in your organization.
Yeah, I think there is, we as women kind of have our journeys, right? Like our own individual journeys for where we discover ourselves. And in each of our stories, there will always be, I think, another woman that we can look up to, who became role models for us, that gave us opportunities, that believed in us, and realized strengths that we didn't even know that we had, and challenged us to be the best. And I think that's how we need to kind of respond as being on the receiving end of that. I think it's partly then our responsibility to treat other women the same way, to give them the same opportunities, because we benefited from that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think definitely more women are moving from this competitiveness against each other to this cohesiveness with each other. And yeah, I know in our organization, we have found that we can make a lot more change, gain a lot more ground when we work together than when we work alone.
Have you all been outside? Sorry to cut you off.
Okay.
But have you been outside of your organization? How do you work well with other women that may be just in Roanoke, trying to get started, trying to move, collaborations maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have that mindset within our organization that helps us to take it outside of our organization. And so we really try to, when we meet other women in the community, other leaders in the community, we really want to tap into their strengths and then provide them with the platform, provide them with the outlet so that they can have their voice heard, so that they can share their experiences and really get it out there. We were talking about Taryn McCoy, and she is a great partner with us. And a couple of years ago, I took her with me to a trip to talk to some Richmond leaders about childcare and the needs and the struggles that are around the childcare industry. And prior to the trip, she told me she wasn't going to go with me. She went. And she felt so amazing afterwards. She said, well, when we get there, I'm not going to speak. But guess what happened? She spoke. She spoke. And now, let me tell you what, now we can't get the girl to stop talking. But that's okay. That's what we wanted her to do. But she has, just felt the safe place. And that's what I think we try to do as an organization, is create that safe place so that we can let people, especially women, have their voices heard and make a difference in our society as a whole.
Let's switch gears for a second. We are in the midst of this pandemic still, and some women are having to make choices whether they are going to continue moving forward in making changes in this community or taking care of their families. How do we adjust to that?
I think we've really seen a hard hit in women in the workplace since the pandemic. And again, it's because women can move a lot of moving pieces at the same time in a way that many men struggle with. And so they have been the ones to step back into the role of that nurturing family connector to make sure that everything keeps going, because it's been hard. Kids are not in school. Thank goodness they're all going back now, but they haven't been in school. So trying to manage those meetings that you're doing over Zoom, plus the meetings that the kids are in for their schoolwork, but managing their schoolwork during the day so that you're trying to keep some sort of sense of normalcy for your family, it's a real challenge.
Right.
And, it takes a real mind shift for a lot of people to be able to tackle that kind of job.
Yeah, and I think it's, somebody had said this to me when we were talking about the same topic, and she said, as women, we always push ourselves to do more. We want to do it all, right? And so taking care of our families, being professionals, being, the leaders and connectors within our community. And I think it's hard. I think the pandemic has caused us to reflect on that and say, we can't do it all, because it's also a very traumatic experience. It's a lot of change. It's a pandemic, for crying out loud, right? Like, with real health and life consequences. And so part of it is the toll that women have had to absorb, not just on the physical and emotional aspect of bearing the load of that, but also the mental health toll of it, the stress and the anxiety that is about keeping your family safe and whole and moving forward. And you're right. I think we've seen, across the country, one of the things that we've been reflecting on is women having to make those choices to kind of stay at home. And what happens then when they want to go back? Will it really set us back? And will really set them back too. So there are real consequences for the employers that are using quality leaders in the workplace, and then for the women themselves that are having to make these decisions. And so part of what I kind of reflect on is, what do we need as a community, is that we need to, recognizing the year that was 2020, and even now, what do we need to do women are starting to go back to the workforce.
Right.
We really can't be using that against them,
Right.
that they made that choice. And sometimes when you look at resumes and we're like, oh, you realize the gap, then you need to understand why that gap was there.
But reality is, somebody's going to say, why the gap?
Yes.
What is the answer to that?
Yes. Yes.
You know, somebody's going to say, you took some time off to take care of your family. This puts you further behind.
So I want to speak to that as a mother, that, you know, men and women will never be created equal, and until men can start helping to reproduce our population and keep our world moving forward, then we will never be equal. But women have to have the grace to continue growing our world, because we're the ones that are responsible for actually having children.
It comes with a penalty.
It,
though.
it seems to come with a penalty, but it shouldn't, because what would happen if we all stopped having babies?
You make good points there, right? That, how do you explain? Should there be a pass for having to come out of work because you took care of your family during a pandemic? Because we're dealing with a whole lot with society right now.
Yeah.
Racial injustice. We're dealing with this pandemic and just trying to keep it all together.
Yeah.
Should there be a pass for that?
I
Because
think
men
we
would
should.
say,
I'm-
some men anyway, could say, this is the reason it was the way it was before. Women take care of the parts they can take care of. Are we in our place, or do we keep going forward?
Yeah, I don't think women should be penalized for that, right? Like, I think there are studies, I mean, from this previous year, which have shown that women have ended up spending more time in housework, taking care of children, still keeping appointments, right? And while working, it's part of fact. And so you can't punish people because of that fact. And I think this is also about like philosophy as workplaces, right? Like as workplaces and businesses functioning in the 21st century, we also have to realize that our employees, women in particular, come to us as individuals. They are not the people that work in the cubicle. That is not who they are. They belong to families. They have children. They might be taking care of elderly parents. Whatever. They come as an individual, right? And for us to be able to tap into the best that employee has to give the company, we need to recognize them as individuals and recognize that and be supportive of that.
Yeah. It's certainly not a one-size-fits-all. You know, somebody would say you treat all employees the same, but everybody has a different need. You can't put everybody in that same, you know, box.
Right.
I may not need what this person may need.
Yes.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Is that beneficial for us moving forward as a community?
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, it's not, things aren't equal across the board. And it does take that mind shift that you can make this work. And, you know, families look different. And my family in particular, I am so blessed that my husband takes care of me. And he does that in a way that I am the one that goes to work every day outside of the household.
Okay.
He is a full-time caregiver of his mother who has dementia. And he stays at home. But believe me, he works hard all day because he takes care of her, and he keeps our household running. So in the traditional sense of the word, we've kind of switched roles. But as a woman, let me tell you what, coming home from work in the evenings and supper is ready for me and the dishes have been done, there is nothing more sexy than that.
Yeah, let us find that husband. Does he have a brother?
Unfortunately, I'm so sorry. No, he doesn't.
Oh, that's good. So tell me the dynamics of your household. So you're married. You have a son.
Yes, I actually have 3 children. I have 2 girls and a son, and they're all grown. So we're empty nesters except for the pets and except for his mother that lives with us, and we care for her. So it is different. It is different for us, but it can be done. But it was always like this in a way because when my children were small, we made a decision as a family that we wanted to raise our children and that we really didn't want to send them to child care. And I was in the business of child care. So how weird does that sound? But I worked at an amazing preschool where I was able to take my children with me. And so before they entered the public school system, they were with me. after they entered the public school system, the schedule was flexible enough that I could still be with them before school, and I was there when they got home in the afternoons. So it worked. But financially, it didn't work. Now, my husband worked a normal 40-hour-a-week job during that time, but still financially, it was hard because I was only working part-time, and we really needed that 2 full-income family. So I worked on the weekends. And he stepped up, and he was dad all weekend long, and I went and worked. So again, making that conscious decision to make it work, and then we've just kind of evolved since then because he's the one that takes care of my clothes. You know, I guess if you mess up the laundry really well one time, he'll take it away from you. But he makes sure I'm very presentable, whatever I leave the house. But again, you know, he keeps those things moving,
that a long
right?
time ago.
But he keeps our world moving. He keeps our house moving, and I come outside of the house and keep that part of it moving, and that's okay. But it's a mind shift that it's still an equalness, you know, and it's still
Partnership.
It's
yeah.
a partnership, and we are a team that works together. And when one of us is down, the other one is up, and we help balance it out.
Okay, and you know that works. Is that the typical situation? Do you think other people would be able to adjust in that way?
I think they have the ability to if they have the desire to. I mean, again, everybody's going to have to weigh out what works for their own individual families. We're all unique. And that way you can't replicate anybody's family. But that's what makes every family so special. But it can be done. And it can be done where everybody feels that they have contributed and that they win.
You need to teach a course in that.
Yeah, but you know what? And I think about this too. I'm like, it shouldn't be limited to just spouses, right? Like when we talk about family, it really is about the extended family. It may be grandparents, it may be neighbors, right? And so that sense of community support, I think, is what has been incredibly beneficial for families and for children growing up, which is why the pandemic has also been has been very devastating, right? For that very fabric, because you can't go anywhere. It's the isolation. Grandparents that used to be taking care of or helping, right? So that there could be balance in the household. You can't do that anymore, or you couldn't do that anymore. Or, you know, things like that. And when you kind of top that with challenges that are more on the economic side, where people are getting laid off, you know, or losing hours or things like that, it is a whole lot harder. And so I think there really is a challenge for us as community to kind of realize even from the experiences of the pandemic, that work is not just being in an office or doing work that is where you get paid. It is equally as hard, sometimes even harder, to be the home, to be running in the household. And I hope that we kind of walk away from this kind of recognizing that the incredible amount of work and skill.
Yeah, there should be some value that comes out of all of this.
Exactly.
As well. You know,
exactly.
Different appreciation for the work that people would have to do. Also, how they have to do it.
Yes.
Yeah, because I know now some people are not wanting to go back into the office. And as long as they're efficient and they get things done, is that a problem?
Exactly.
Right. You know?
Exactly.
What does progress look like in that way?
What does it look like? You still can do it. You know,
absolutely.
Because we have seemed to be very productive in the way we've had to do it because of this pandemic. So I would say, you know, we can still kind of work a little bit of that out. Vivian, we were talking earlier that you do have a son.
Yes.
And I wanted to broach this conversation because we were talking about how difficult it is for your son. Tell a little bit about what problems you're having right now. I have 3 black sons at a time right now where it's just this racial tension is just so high with police officers and black and brown people.
So I do have a son. He is 22 years old, blonde-haired, blue eyes, handsome as can be. Maybe, yes, I'm biased. But as a mom, you know, my heart is just cinched up right now. He has decided to join the police academy. And with all of the social unrest that has been taking place across the country over the past year, it has really allowed us the opportunity to have some extremely difficult conversations, very uncomfortable conversations, but very necessary conversations. I want to make sure that he is safe. And it's scary for me for him to be in that type of position.
Mhm.
I love the fact that he is service-minded and service-oriented and wants to give back into his community in that way, but it scares me to death as a mom. And I want to make sure that he is as safe as possible. He's always been the kid that if he sees someone being bullied, he's going to step in and stop it, and he is really the one that wants to do right.
Mhm.
But we've talked about what does it mean to approach someone who you just watched break the law. Why are you approaching them? You know, you're probably not approaching them like you said because that was a great right-hand turn that you made. You remembered to put on your signal and
Right.
everything. That's not why people get pulled over.
Mhm.
And so what does it mean when you pull over a black or a brown person and they're already going to be defensive because they're scared, and rightfully so because of their
Right.
experiences in the past.
Mhm.
But now what does that mean for you in the way that you approach that person?
Mhm.
And how are you going to handle that person? And how are you going to be safe? And how are we going to make sure that tensions don't run high? That we can all make it through a situation like that without anyone getting hurt or
And I
scared.
totally understand that.
Yeah.
Like I said, I have 3 black sons, and 25, 17, and 14. So not only am I teaching them to drive,
Yes.
but I'm also teaching them what to do, what's the right thing to do when you're pulled over by a police officer. My kids would fear your son, and it's not fair, it's what's happening. I just don't know how you have that type of conversation, you know, and I understand you as a white mom,
Yeah.
white son going into the police force, and my black son is being pulled over. You know,
Right.
it's just such social unrest right now. How do you keep him safe? How do you tell him not to pull over somebody? Or do you tell him you got to still do your job, but how do you make sure that you're doing the right thing?
Right. And of course, and I don't want to undermine any of the training that they're putting cadets through right now. I'm sure they're doing the best that they can with all of the tools and resources they have. But then me as a mom, and of course being in the human services field, I start throwing things at him and I say, I need you to watch this video about being trauma informed. And what does it mean to be trauma informed? And how do you approach someone that's going to be nervous because you turned on the lights behind them? And is it dark outside or is it light outside? And what kind of security do you have your body cam on? You know, what are protective factors that you're going to have for yourself? But also, how can you think about those protective factors being in place for the person that you're pulling over? And really trying to take a hard look at it in both ways. And I never kind of thought of a lot of differences personally. When I was growing up, I grew up in Roanoke. I had tons of friends of color, first generation from India, black friends, white friends, Asian friends. It wasn't something that I thought about often because it seemed very normal to me to have friends of color. My children, on the other hand, were raised in a community where there was no color. And when my daughter was 3 years old, I took her to a friend's child care center because she opened it up. It was brand new, and I was so proud of her. And she was 3 years old, and she looked around in that child care center with other children her age. And she looked up at me and whispered, "Mommy, we're the only white people here." I hadn't thought about it at all. And for me, that was one of the very first times that I thought, "Ugh, if my daughter is feeling uncomfortable about this, I've done something wrong. She shouldn't feel this way." But it also gave me the opportunity to think, is this how my black and brown friends have felt their entire lives?
Absolutely. 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 And I think you would have to have that conversation because your son is going into the police force. You will make any black person you pull over uncomfortable.
Yes.
Just your very nature, just you being there, you pulling them over. Because like, you know, we said, you're not pulling them over because they made a beautiful right turn. Have you had that conversation? What are you going to do when you have to pull a black person over? What do you do?
Right. And it is, you know, again, we're very early in this whole process with him being in the police academy, and I can hope and pray that they will give him the necessary tools to make smart, good, right decisions for him and for whoever he may be pulling over. Because, again, for a mom, it's so scary. Is he going to come home every night? What does this look like?
And that's what I feel. Are they
Yes.
coming home
Yes.
every night?
Yes.
Abby, you were going to talk. We were also talking about what's happening now in the Asian community, the targets out here, just the hate.
You know, I think we usually refer to like experiences of Black and brown people in terms of social unrest from this past year. And then we talk about the hate that Asians and Pacific Islanders experience from this past year. But let's all be honest. I mean, that experience has been going on for years. And there is nothing in my mind other than it is sickening. Because it makes you think about, why would we not value life the same way that we value our own? And what made people this way, right? Like, how did we get this far, and what have we as a society done to either condone hate, or look away and not pay attention to it? And so I think for the experience of Asians like me, who are here in this country, and I'm also an immigrant, right? And so we are finding a place in a country and making this country our home, contributing to the community that is here, and wanting to be part of this fabric. And incidences like this make you feel like you may be not wanted, or you don't belong, right? And I think and I go back to our conversation earlier about what really will make us as a community successful going into recovery. It is that sense of community. And so instead of fearing each other or hating each other, that is a normal reaction, I guess, when you feel like you're being threatened. And the pandemic certainly has made a lot of people threatened for their own safety for whatever reasons, and various reasons. But the thing that will get us through will be our sense of community, and the sense of commonality that we are going through a difficult time together. And the way that we can recover is together, is working through it together.
Understood. And I know, Vivian, it scares you. But I would say, honestly, and I know sitting on that side, it's hard to, fathom, but I would say this is an opportunity for your son to get in and help change a culture.
Yes,
Absolutely.
indeed.
I think white people have to be the leaders in creating the solutions, so that we can have a whole mindset across, everywhere, right? Because where's the problem? I mean, do your Black sons have a problem with other Black boys? Do they see each other in a fearful way as they would see my son? So what can we do to change that mindset, to create solutions and acceptance across the board?
That's what it is. Solutions and acceptance. Will you be able to accept a person the way they are, who they are? Will we be able to do that? And I do think that a community can do that. Do you think that we can come together? What are some of the things that may be happening now that is pushing us in that direction, is, if anything? Well, I think more opportunities. I think about the work that Points of Diversity has done, which is a great organization, and what they've did, this was even pre-pandemic, is to create spaces for conversation, like some of these in a very comfortable, dinner conversation with people who really are from different backgrounds. And I think one of the benefits of that, the community that we feel, that just the community that talk, and think like us, but really opening up spaces for dialogue for people that are different, and for us to be able to learn the skills of really about listening without judgment. Absolutely.
And truly understanding what people are saying. And it's already a gift that many women have, so
you saw that, Abby.
We're also kind of like very welcoming, right? Like we're also already very welcoming to people. So like, how do we create spaces and make room for people in our lives? Because our hearts have the incredible capacity for love and generosity. So, we need to kind of open that up to people and hear their stories and get to know people.
Is that already happening in our community?
I think to a certain extent.
Having opportunities to talk about bias, things like that, and really removing stereotypes. It's kind of a starting point. But we still have very siloed communities within our larger community. And so, we will see neighborhoods that are made up solely of Black people. We will see neighborhoods made up solely of Asian people or of Latino or of white people. And part of that is culture. And again, this is an acceptance piece.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay to embrace culture. But it's okay to mix culture as well. And, I don't know about you. Well, I know about you, but one of those things for us and just education is let's go explore culture and let's try people's food. That's a weak spot for us.
It's easy.
It's
easy. It's very not threatening. Share a meal together.
And think about the joys that come with that culture and the celebrations that come with different cultures and the joy that just comes with different cultures.
You two are also receptive. You've worked together for 4 years at the United Way. How was that transition? Were you always this amenable to accept each other?
I think so. I think we were.
We well, and I think I think back. I'm like, I've been at United Way for 19 years now, and I can think back when I started, and I was the only brown person working there. So I think I've always been in a position where I say, I'm like, it will only be a problem if I don't do anything about it. Right. And so to create, I think that's has been my commitment is how do I make sure that that I make connections with people, that get to know them as people, as individuals with the fullness of who they are.
Right.
And how do we continue to make connections of me? It's also a growth process for me, right? Like appreciating my own culture, who I am, and embracing that. So I've been really fortunate that I've been with a team that that has allowed me to do that and embrace the fullness of who I am, to be able to celebrate that.
Well, and I've mentioned, I think Abby is very empowering to her entire staff, but she also has, this gift that she's okay with you asking questions, and I think most people are okay. If you want to ask her questions about her life, her history, her heritage, ignorance does breed prejudice. We don't know what we don't know.
Right.
And we're going to continue to not know unless we ask some of those weird, uncomfortable questions about what was it like when you were growing up. I used to hear certain, I don't want fairy tales or old wives' tales or whatever about different cultures and the way that they would do things. Is that true? Talk to me about what really was it like. And so creating opportunities again to have conversations like this among different cultures, among different races, is really just an opportunity to educate and again remove those biases, remove those prejudices, and create an understanding.
Absolutely. Are those conversations happening in our community?
They could be better.
Yes.
But I think starting.
I think there's really a movement, I think, from the perspective of like nonprofit, I'm like taking my nonprofit hat and, thinking about all of the nonprofit leaders at the moment are kind of very keen on making sure that we are focused on equity, on diversity, embracing inclusiveness, and taking the steps necessary to kind of move in that direction. I applaud the work of our arts commission, the leaders of like TAP, Annette Lewis over at TAP. You've got some great leaders out in the community who are setting example by starting within their own organizations. And then at the same time creating the type of change that is necessary community-wide by making sure that the experience is going to be the same regardless of which organization you go to. And then I think about the work that the city has done in terms of establishing committees that are around making sure that people have representation and have a voice. I think those are starting points, right? When we make space to hear from people knowing that those ideas will be different and knowing what to do with the various ideas that might be coming from different places and forming them into a solution that actually is the best solution for everybody.
I think across the country, including here, everybody's adopting the DEI concept, which should happen.
Yes.
Not to exclude men,
Yes.
but to include everybody.
Yes.
You know, what are some of the changes that you think we can make immediately beyond what we're already doing, perhaps?
It's just more opportunities to create these safe spaces, more grace to say it's really not a stupid question.
Right,
know?
right.
Because I know myself. I don't want to put my foot in my mouth. I don't want to ask the wrong thing, but I do want to ask questions, and I want to learn and educate myself. So I want to go about doing that in a safe way and in a respectful way. And so sometimes that happens just by being able to have a personal relationship with another person of color where you can have at least that starting point.
Right, right. Conversation is good. Conversation is healthy.
Yeah.
Conversation will help break the culture and change things because, like you were saying, that when you don't know, that's what breeds prejudice and fear and things like that. So just ask the convert.
Yeah, and I think about, how we as businesses operate too, and how I think we really need to kind of take a hard look that we either have unconsciously created either policies or procedures or whatever, or protocols that have excluded people. I think we need to be aware and critically evaluate ourselves to be culprits that perpetuated the lack of diversity to begin with. And so we need to take an honest look at that and kind of really truly commit to, not just diversity in terms of being intentional about certain things, but ensuring that we create the type of culture and environment within organizations that is accepting and embracing of diversity. Because it's one thing to bring people in, to hire them, to recruit them in your boards. That's one thing, right? But when they get there, do they really have a voice? Do they really offer the representation? Are their ideas valued?
Yeah.
Do we take them seriously? That is where it's making a difference, because you can equally traumatize people and scare them,
Right.
if you don't do it right. So I think those are the two things that we as businesses and community organizations can think about as well.
Good, good. Okay, so one thing that I do want to ask you, what inspires you? You can think about it for a second. What inspires you? You're the CEO and the president of United Way. You're the VP. Like, what inspires you? How do you encourage another woman, and what's encouraging to you?
To be able to say that I've been in this position for 4 years, and I've gone through some really challenging conversations, really challenging experiences, working with local leaders and working with state leaders. The big reward comes when you can see real system change take place. And so how can we take the little wins and build off of those to create bigger and bigger and bigger wins? Because it's been 4 years. We're still not in a perfect society. It's going to be a long time before we're there. But we are seeing changes take place that really do matter to families who need certain services, who need certain resources. It does happen. And so that inspires me to know that there are people out there who will take the time to listen, but will also speak up, because I don't have all of the answers. I don't have them all. But I can reach out to those in our community who do have the answers and who do have the lived experiences and help them lift their voice up to where it makes a difference. So that's very inspiring.
Good job.
Yeah. I think what inspires me, gets me fired up in the morning is really like collaboration. When people come together, not in the kumbaya way, right? Like when people come together, when we argue the best ideas, when we feel like we can create safe spaces to offer up ideas, and no idea is too dumb or whatever, and that we genuinely do come together. That is the thing that kind of gets me excited all the time, because I see progress that way, and I see truly a fabric of the community being built when people come together. And that's, whenever I see that on a daily basis in my job, I consider it a win. And it doesn't have to be a personal win for me, but when I see that, everybody's coming together for something to be able to offer something better for somebody else and make a difference in somebody else's lives, that to me is a win. That is what gets me up in the morning and makes me go at it again the following day.
That is certainly some girl power. So, is the future female?
Oh, absolutely. No doubt.
100%.
No doubt. No doubt. The future has always been female.
Thank you, ladies, so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Anything you would like to add to this conversation? Anything you want to cover?
No, I just want to thank you
Yeah,
for,
absolutely.
again, like an enjoyable conversation and the leadership and initiative that it takes to kind of have conversations like this. That, again, it itself is an admirable and commendable thing.
Courageous.
Yes.
I mean, it's really courageous for you to be able to take this seat and have one of those conversations with me and talking about our sons.
Yeah,
You know,
what?
in that way,
I'm
it
passionate
is.
about it, but I have to admit that I had a man behind me. Curtis.
Yeah.
Curtis came up with the idea. We were trying to think about how to have these conversations. He says, "Why don't you have a town hall?" So we just kind of came up with,
Yeah.
"This is it. This is
Yeah.
the vision."
This is wonderful.
Yeah, it's
It-
been
it'll-
good though. It's been good. It's been healthy that we can have these conversations. And like I said, it wasn't to put anybody on the spot, but to have these conversations. How do you feel about these things? With me, you can talk about how you feel,
Yes.
not what you think. You
Yes.
know, because the only way to make it better is for us to come to the table and have these discussions.
Yes.
But that's it. That's
Well,
it.
thank you.
Any questions, fellas? Questions? Yeah.
We made it through without needing tissues.
I know we
Yeah,
did.
I know. But
We held it together.
when we start talking about those kids and
I
when you start
know.
talking about the passion behind, what's happening, this hate and stuff, it becomes emotional. So,
Yeah.
But I'll make sure next time I have tissues. 'Cause,
No, that's why
Just
we wear
in case.
sleeves, right?
Look, I would have done this.
Hey, we're wearing our masks.
Masks,
We
I'm
can't
like,
get out of
exactly. That's
anything
what the
right now.
masks are for.
No, this was good. This was good. I appreciate you. I know you guys have busy schedules, and for me to be able to just have you block out some time for me, I appreciate that.
Oh, anytime.
Yeah.
I said.
Those are your snacks. I meant to tell you.
Woo!
that
I'm
before.
gonna take
Like,
mine. I'm gonna take mine. I never refuse
You
chocolate.
could have had water and all that
I
other
don't
stuff.
like-
We
I
also
never
have
refuse.
chips and things like that. You want chips?
No.
We have plain barbecue,
This will take
Pringles.
place at the
The
Rice
Rice
Krispies.
Krispies.